Just getting started, really want to give an intro. My name is Christina Vagi. I am the Director of Strategy here at Silvertech. I was the head strategist with Independent Bank on this project. I advise clients, many clients in financial institutions as well as manufacturing. I always make the joke that I even advise the largest stage union for actors, and yes, that is true. So there's a variety of verticals that we serve here at Silvertech, which I think, really makes us well-rounded in the advice that we give and the advisement we're able to offer. But the strategy piece was such a cornerstone to this project that I think we're going to get into some of the details of that and how we all brought it to life. But I'm joined today by Matt Greene, the Senior Vice President and CMO of Independent Bank. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Christina. Appreciate it. Looking forward to today's discussion. As CMO here at Independent Bank, I oversee all marketing-related functions, as you can imagine. Newer to the organization, this will be my third year, not just to the organization, but to the industry. So I came from the outside as well and share some of my insights as how I was bringing some of that outside perspective into the financial industry. But prior to that, several years in the healthcare space, yet another highly regulated, complicated industry. So really, my origins come really starting in marketing from really a digital MarTech space, and I've evolved that through a variety of other domains and functions in marketing, leading me to this position here at Independent Bank.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's highly regulated industries. They're a different animal. There's so many things. I mean, obviously, we always talk about data privacy and really wanting to trust. Certainly something I'm incredibly passionate about. But I think it's so different when you're in a space where you're talking about money, you're talking about health. These are very private matters to people, and it's becomes a much different conversation when it's beyond just your name and address, right?
Absolutely. And I think part of the experience bringing in and coming from the healthcare industry, yes, regulation, running across that as well. But I do feel getting back to, like you were saying, the emotional connection to healthcare, just like you talking about your financial journey, highly personal and, significant to where you are in your life cycle. So again, similarities, but at the core of any industry is really just getting to understanding the customer in anticipation of what their needs and wants are and delivering that robust experience so that you're delivering the value for why they wanted to be a customer of yours to begin with. So I think there's a lot of similarities, yes, differences, but bringing that expertise to Independent Bank was, I think, critical to the success of what we're doing or discussing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. So let's kick it off with a poll. If you know me, you know I love a good poll. So let's kick this off. Where is your team in your personalization journey? You're going to see some options pop up on the screen here. Really want to get a little temperature check of the audience and feel free, like really be honest here. We have a variety of clients across, different steps of their journey. Some haven't started yet, but we really want to learn. We want to get started. Maybe you're more in that just getting started phase where you're put some things in motion, but you're still testing and optimizing. We have a good bit of people who are, using it already. Maybe they're looking to take it to the next level. And then, of course, our personalization pros. And I'll be completely candid with you. There's very few folks in that category. This is still a big area of growth that I see across a lot of my clients. We do have clients who are really, really driving hard on personalization. But I would say a lot of times, we're helping people get started. We're helping them build that up and then walking alongside them on this journey. So yeah, definitely drop a vote. And we'll take a look at the results and sort of talk through, where are we at with this step. Let's see, as we start to get those votes coming in. I think it's so interesting. I feel like I've been talking about personalization for 100 years, but I really haven't. And I'm always kind of, I think everyone sort of thinks like, well, everybody else is doing it and doing it well. And, we're so far behind, but I always sort of think in these talks that it's really important to realize like, you're not far behind, you're right around where your peers are. And the common sort of barriers, they transcend. And I think that it's important to kind of remember that, we're all working towards the same things here. All right.
And you're right, just to add to that, I mean, personalization is a maturity, I feel, and everyone's doing it at some level, but it's really the maturity. And to your point, it's been around a while, and the evolution of it now is we talk about what? Hyper personalization. And
Right.
so, right, it's just that continual evolution and maturity as I see it. And I think that's some of the things we're going to get into here in a moment.
Yeah, definitely. And as we see those votes come in, it looks like most people are in that haven't started or just kind of getting started bucket. And I will say that's very common. So we're really glad you're here today to talk about this because I think you're going to leave this webinar with some good ideas and hopefully some inspiration for your journey going forward and how you can bring that to life with your organization. So let's kind of just zoom through an agenda. What are we looking to talk about today? We want to talk about the redesign story. How did we get here? What were we kind of aiming to do? And then some of the really key features of this when it comes to AI. So the AI search, how we're using AI in our personalization strategy, how we're measuring those results, and then what's next. And obviously we're going to hit that Q&A. And before the end of today, you're also going to leave here with some actionable next steps. So my goal is always when you shut this webinar off and you go back to your desk or you move on to your next thing, what can you take away and get started with today? So hopefully you're going to stick with us till the end. You'll get those takeaways and you'll be able to hit the ground running this afternoon if you really wanted to. So let's talk about the challenge behind the change. So Matt, what sort of brought you to this point where you realized that you needed to make this improvement and what brought you to Silvertech?
So the journey, I mean, started well before we actually got into the decision of saying, all right, we need to redesign and modernize our website. So if we back up a little bit further from that, is really establishing that vision, the North Star of where we're trying to go holistically around the customer experience, specifically around the digital experience. So what are we trying to accomplish as an organization, and what does that vision look like? So we were all leaning into, again, so now we're probably 2 years removed from that, but thinking about this frictionless customer experience. How do we deliver the seamless, omni personalized experience to our consumers, and really kind of rethink how we are delivering the experience to the customer across all our channels. And so one of the critical channels, as you alluded, is looking through the lens of our digital front door, our website. So we have a variety of initiatives running parallel to this, and we felt, just based on where we're at in this time, that we were lagging or a little bit behind, I felt, the consumer expectations and what customers were realizing in other experiences and other brands. And that expectation, I just felt like we just weren't meeting it, both from an experience level, from a content and engagement level, as well as overall, are we meeting the needs of our customers, and are they coming to our site and just leaving, or they're just creating kind of a friction experience and maybe just kind of going to another brand. So we had to really think about this from a variety of levels to then say, yes, we feel like the website is a critical asset, and we feel like the experience is a little bit behind. And let's think about what value and return that we can lean into to justify going down the path of redesigning our website. So the key of that was we just felt like table stakes. We got to get to the game. We got to really kind of rethink our digital strategy. So let's embark on this journey. And so that's what started the process for embarking down a web redesign initiative.
Yeah. And I think that, those are such great points. And again, it's a lot of what I hear when clients do come to us. They, these are kind of the things that we're looking at. We just don't feel like it's representative of our brand. We don't feel like we're doing a good job serving our customers. We think there's a better way. And it's a lot of times it's the things that just kind of happen over time. Pages get added, content gets added, things get added to a menu. Maybe it's inconsistent. You have turnover in your web team, and so things get inconsistent. Maybe the brand voice gets inconsistent over time. And it's not a failure or fault of anyone. It's just what happens over time. And eventually, you do need to say, like, what are we doing? How can we do this better? And I think we're also in this like window of time right now. I mean, technology has always moved quickly, right? But I feel like right now we're accelerating at such a quick pace, especially with the introduction of AI, that if your platform is not strong enough, you really can't be doing the types of things that you want to be doing. And that can become a big barrier.
Absolutely. And some of the key challenges we had in regards to that was thinking about the lens of, like you were saying, kind of the governance, the standards, right? I felt like we really weren't consistent and had a very well-defined, articulated set of standards. Even within marketing, I think we kind of fell into maybe our own little trap of just constantly iterating and coming up with new standards, which then creates another situation when we're creating content for others that if we don't have any standards, we start to lose the effectiveness of what we're delivering, and it's tough to scale. So I think we
Yeah.
had some challenges there we had to overcome, as well as you alluded to, the consistency of our voice in tone, right? So again, how is the brand being perceived? Are we clear? Do we have to do some work around not just the visual identity of the brand, but as well as the overall kind of messaging tone and voice? And so in parallel to this, and I know we'll talk a little bit about it here in a moment, but we also were embarking down a brand enhancement initiative. So that was a little bit in front of this, but at the same time, running side by side, is we wanted to really understand and assess where our brand was, and do we need to kind of pivot and go into a different direction? Do we need to make some enhancements and modifications? So we were tying this all together, not just from a digital experience, but as well as looking through the lens of making sure our brand voice was consistent throughout the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of, what drove the decision that now we need to improve our digital experience. And actually, I kind of to segue over to how you got to Silvertech, you actually had joined one of these webinars, and
Yeah.
I remember you had reached out and said, "Hey, let's have this conversation." And I love that because I think it's a good reminder to all of us marketers that like this matters, this kind of stuff matters and it does work out. And I love a success story. So I think that's so great that we were able to connect that way. So let's talk about
Absolutely.
developing it together.
Yep.
So once we started working together, we really started thinking about, these are the challenges we're looking to overcome. How can we do this, with a clear strategy in mind and really thinking through like, what does our MarTech stack look like? Where do we want to add some supplementation? How do we have technology to support these goals? We did have a discussion like, do we need a full site redesign? If you've known me or if you've ever heard me talk, I am not a big believer in just, throwing out tools. I'm a big believer in maximizing your current investments before onboarding anything new. So I always like to start with a prudent approach and a real investigation piece of, do we really need to do this and what does it look like? We did decide we do need to do a redesign for some of the reasons that we talked about before, especially the technology piece and where we were looking to go. And then we start to talk about, okay, well, what does that look like? How does that come to life? And what are we trying to kind of put out there? And one of the things that I love about the independent bank brand is you're really focused on empowerment. You really focus on empowering the customer to have the financial tools, have the knowledge, be independent. I mean, it's literally your tagline. Like, I just love that. And it's like, okay, if we're going to do that, like, how do we put our money where our mouth is, right? Like, how do we do that digitally? And that's when we started talking about things like the AI driven intelligence and replacing search with more of a chat style AI, experience, as well as personalization and using AI to help supplement our personalization efforts. I mean, what is be independent if not something personal, right? So how do we deliver an independent experience in a way, that really is tailored to that user? And leveraging Radin, which was a tool you already had, in conjunction with the website, really took that personalization to the next level. Finally, we really talked about that day one launch strategy. We knew that we didn't really want to do it in phases. And there's a lot of clients that I work with who do want to do it in phases, and that works well a lot of the time. In this instance, we wanted to make a big splash. So we said, how can we do this and make a big impact on day one from launch? And that, I will be honest, provided its own set of challenges. But I think that the teams working together and having such a good relationship really allowed us to achieve that. So when you hit this new site, it felt like, oh wow, this is different in a good way. It was a very different situation.
Absolutely. And so as I think back through all this, and you hit on some key points there, right? This wasn't just kind of a, all right, we're going to lift and shift and just kind of move forward, right? So we were really kind of revisiting, and really kind of the transformational mindset, that growth mindset of what we're trying to accomplish. And you're right, we have a very, I feel, robust, I'll say, kind of personalization ecosystem, right? And there's a variety of tools and tech that we have in place currently, and then new tech that we brought in that we felt there was kind of a void and gap based on the experience that we are trying to deliver for our consumers that are visiting the site. So yes, we went through a variety of kind of those evaluation points and then figure out, all right, based on our content strategy, based on the goals and objectives that you just outlined, where are we trying to go with the experience? And so we went through just some of your traditional, I would say, digital experience elements and looking through, like you were saying, kind of the modernization of easy to navigate, easy to use, standard US patterns and design. I feel elements that are very kind of, consumer expected, and we want to incorporate those into the experience while we're layering in our brand platform as well. But the use of, to your point, technology and how we can enable the technology to deliver that robust, personalized, and relevant experience to our consumers. That for us, we felt was the game changer and the foundational element to allow us to get to that next level. And we continue to build against that roadmap as we speak. So many layers
Yeah.
to it. And we're really pleased where we landed, and we're continuing to evolve that as we speak.
Yeah, and that tech piece is so it's so crucial because you can do on some of the smaller environments, on like a WordPress environment, you can still do personalization, but are you going to be able to do it at scale? Because this is a conversation I have pretty frequently where some of these higher level, more intricate types of experiences, they require a more robust CMS, a stronger platform, not just for performance, but for security. And certainly, as we talked about at the top of the hour, the highly regulated industry, we have to be really conscientious when it comes to security. So especially when we're talking about bringing in, data aggregators and providers like Radin and integrating all these tools together, it becomes a true omni-channel experience. And we need to have something that can, serve as a strong foundation for that. So we did end up choosing HubSpot as our CMS. HubSpot, just from an industry POV, like HubSpot has been doing amazing with growth when it comes to in the CMS market. When they first came out with their CMS, I think everyone was kind of just like, oh, that's great, another HubSpot offering, because everyone was used to the CRM. But they have really put some time and energy and some dollars behind building out that product, and it is a great product. And if you're already on the CRM, which you all are, it really made a lot of sense to continue with that, not just, from sort of just an ease of, MarTech creep, but also because, your power users, your editors, your content editors, your web managers, they were all used to working in the CRM. So it was a natural extension and allowed us to unify some systems and some data. So we're not quite as disparate. Which is nice when you can sort of streamline things. I think that's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with our environment, we came into it, as a team, through a variety of just legacy, I would say, kind of issues that just over time have compiled. So, we had probably, multiple CSS files happening. We had multiple developers in there at some point, some with the organization, some no longer, right? And so we had a little bit of a Frankenstein kind of going underneath the surface a little bit. So once we kind of got past all of that and really just said, let's reset and reestablish really our core stack in terms of development, in terms of CSS, all the thing in marketing automation, by the way, which we do use HubSpot for as well. And so we just felt like the capability, like you were mentioning, we just weren't maximizing what we had, and we just didn't feel like there was a need to open the door and head down another path once we weren't even utilizing what we had in front of us.
Yeah, and that's where, leaning on your digital partner can really help, because we are in these tools every day and we advise on them. It is like music to my ears when someone calls me and says, "Hey, how can I maximize, my CRM? How can I maximize my marketing automation?" Like, you're spending money on these tools. Let's make it, let's use them. Let's really make it worth it. So I think that's where, leaning on your partner can really help because we can help advise you on here's what we've seen that's worked. Here's what we've seen that maximizes ROI. Here's ways you could maybe cut back or change course a little bit. And it helps to make sure you're getting every dollar out of that investment.
Yeah. And that's one of the key evaluation criteria we were looking for as we were looking for a partner in this journey is the MarTech understanding, sophistication, and capabilities of their internal team, as well as the strategic side of it. So that blend of kind of the a little bit of the art and science, if you will, I guess, as you
Mhm.
think about what we're trying to accomplish here. And so again, let's maximize what we have, and then we have some newer tech that we're going to integrate in and layer it into this seamless experience that will ultimately impact benefit our consumers.
Yeah, I love that. The art and science. I'm gonna absolutely I'm gonna update my LinkedIn with that as soon as we get off this call. Master of art and science.
Yes.
Let's do another poll. Let's talk about the brand. We just spent a good chunk talking about the brand and what brought us here. So I would love to hear from you all. How do you feel your brand is communicated digitally? Is it telling the right story? Because I hear a lot of feedback often in these webinars when I'm out at conferences talking to people where they're sort of like, it's close, but maybe it misses the mark, or maybe we feel like we need a refresh. So would love for you to take a quick gander at the poll and drop your vote in there because I think that it's so easy and to your point, Matt, just over time you kind of drift a little bit and it's natural. And eventually we kind of wake up one day and we're like, oh man, how did we get here? We need to kind of course correct a little bit. And that's when we start talking about doing either a full rebrand or, as you all did, sort of a refresh in alignment with this project.
Yeah, so one of the points, as you alluded to, thinking about it, was that we had to understand where the brand was, and are there areas or gaps that we can improve? And so this is where we're thinking about bringing the brand to life in a clear, concise. Does it reflect who we are, why we do what we do? And I think that's the core identity of the brand. And we had to do some work internally to make sure it's not just externally facing, but we're all aligned on the core values and tenets of the brand. So, as you said, that was critical, I felt, to some of the work. We did some research, we did a variety of kind of your brand enhancement type of strategies to really refine and enhance and really just get it to a point where we felt that it would even amplify more and be more effective in the marketplace and allow us to be more consistent in how we share and tell our story, more emotionally connecting to our audience. And we thought it was just critical to what we were doing on delivering this web redesign as well.
But I think what a great takeaway here is just looking at the poll results, most of our crowd today is kind of in that mostly communicated well, not quite communicated well zone, which is what I see. I think that aligns really well with what I see pretty consistently. But I think what the takeaway here is you don't need a full brand overhaul. You can do thoughtful tweaks. You can do a refresh in conjunction with something like this and still make a big impact, especially if you're looking at delivering that true omni-channel digital experience. It's a great time to look at maybe we just do some tweaks, maybe we just freshen it up a little bit and then sort of restructure our brand standards to solve for some of those consistency issues.
Yeah.
It's much more achievable that way.
I agree. And what we really leaned into was as we were working through the brand platform aspects of this was, brand is not a campaign. And I felt like just internally we got a little hung up on that. And so I think we reset the organization around the platform. And then we brought it to marketing. We activated it through a campaign. So that was a little bit of some internal, I would say, kind of knowledge and learning that we had to do to help kind of articulate what we're trying to accomplish here. And I thought that was beneficial for the organization.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's jump into the AIs. Not a day goes by in my life where I'm not talking about AI recently, and I'm sure you probably feel the same. So let's jump right in. Implementing the AI search. Now, this was something I remember when we started talking about this. we really looked into the data of how the website search was performing. Something I always recommend is making sure you're tracking on your website searches, not just how many times it's being, engaged with, but what are those search terms? How can we, answer those questions before people search with it? And, something that I've seen in user testing through a lot of the user testing exercises I've gone through with various clients is that some folks just like to search. They don't even hit the main navigation. They're not looking at the content on the homepage. They are hitting that search and running. And I think as we continue to see this evolution and this adoption of AI and ChatGPT, Claude, more and more people are using these apps as research tools. This is becoming our sort of new search and our new way of navigating the web. So when we started talking about this, it became a question of like, what can we do that's innovative, that's more empowering? And we started to look at the data of how people were interacting with the search, and we made a very calculated, data-backed decision that this felt like a supported risk. It's a bit of a risk because it's different than what people see on sites normally. But we felt like it was a responsible risk that we could take that could really prove well for us. And I think what we've seen is that it really does. It performs wonderfully. You'll see here in this graphic, when you hit the search on the website, looks like a chat experience, but this is actually more of a search experience. It is a chat experience in that AI manner. But what it allows us to do is a couple different things. It allows us to create CTAs within the search experience. With the typical website search, we would not be able to do that. So there's another place here where we can help the user convert very quickly. It also helps us get in touch with our users. So you'll see there, we can start a live chat. At a certain response, I believe we hit with, would you like to schedule an appointment? So it's really a concierge type experience that sort of blends a search experience with a chat experience because it's supported with AI. And what I think is critical here too, and what I like about it, is that the tool we're using here for AI search is scanning the content of the site in real time. So as you are updating content on the site, you are getting better answers in this search, and it is only using your website content, which really speaks to the integrity of the answer the user is getting. If you were using, if a customer was using a ChatGPT to research, that can be a little bit murky. If you've ever interacted with an AI bot and used it for research, sometimes it's good and sometimes it misses the mark. So by using this in place of website search, we're really ensuring the integrity of the responses and the information that we're giving to the users, while also encouraging them to convert as soon as possible or reach out with questions.
Yeah, and kudos to our team. I really felt like this was becoming table stakes in the regard of again, the user experience and the consumer expectations. You talk about AI, open AI to the ChatGPT. I mean, the prompting interaction kind of modal and that behavior is really now almost table stakes. So we wanted to think nonlinear. We wanted to jump off of this. Let's not just have a search bar to go find kind of some static content. Let's bring this and understand the customers that are coming to the target that's coming to our site, and bring this experience. So again, we wanted to lean into tech. We felt like this was innovation, bringing into that new experience to the customers and prospects visiting the site, as well as still being a community bank. We wanted to provide that ability to click, call, or come in. So whether you want to chat with us and find an answer, or maybe you're just at a point where you need to talk to a representative, right? We just felt like integrating this into a more robust experience was the right thing. And so as you see here, yes, and go to the site today and begin to interact with it. And just, again, it's getting out of that static keywords, just more into conversational type of experiences that we wanted to bring to our customers so that we can seamlessly get them to the right content or the job that they're trying to accomplish, quick, easy, and without any friction.
Yeah, and I think it proves itself out in those outcomes. We saw dramatic reduction in support volume for those like sort of consistent I don't want to say easy questions, but yeah, like the more easy questions that we could support digitally. We saw increases in conversion. I mean, that's a totally different game versus over, a traditional website search, as well as that improvement in self-sufficiency, and more personal banking, interaction. I think it's such an interesting way. We talk a lot about, I talk a lot about serving people and meeting people where they're at, right? Going to them, not expecting them to engage with you on your terms. And we talk about it a lot when it comes to how we structure websites and what does that look like. But this is really an extension of that. This is the next level.
Yeah. And I do feel it kind of flattens some of the content there so people can come in fairly quickly and get to a point seamlessly. At the same time, those that maybe want to kind of get into more of a traditional web experience have that option as well.
Right.
So again, we just felt like this was the direction where it was going. Kudos to the team for really driving it, the marketing team doing a great job of really championing this internally to continue to drive this behavior and expectations for our digital experience.
Yeah. And I think with most things that I'm seeing with AI, we sort of start small, we get some quick wins and successes, and then all of a sudden we're like, all right, now what else can we do? And that kind of brought us to personalization. How do we use AI in our personalization strategy? What does that look like? So we do it, we do integrate with a tool called Radin, which has predictive analytics and really uses AI machine learning to understand buying trends, as well as, some of those next best product recommendations. And this is really helping us in our strategy to support content recommendations when it comes to personalization. Typically, when we start with a personalization strategy, I always recommend starting with campaign-based personalization, user interactions on the website. And this really kind of took us to the next level by being able to look at key life indicators, looking at product adoption as it is, and make more strategic recommendations when it comes to how we are trying to grow wallet share. Radin is fantastic as it integrates with HubSpot, because using this data and the AI tools and within Radin, we're able to create personalized experiences and personalized elements on our homepage, such as our hero banner, based on those needs and preferences. And all of this is real time. So visitor actions are really enforcing and continue to reinforce or recategorize interests in some cases. To inform those personalization choices, which then crafts the experience. So what we have created is this unified experience that is happening across channels, so that when someone comes to the website, they are seeing something that is highly targeted to them and their interests.
Yeah, and I think as most on the webinar today understand that the most successful customer experience brands do a few things well, and one thing that I feel that they all do very well is they know their customer. And so using the data and insights, obviously, to drive and inform that personalized experience was instrumental to what we were trying to accomplish. So as you mentioned, with Radin, a Fiserv product, right, that allows us to look at first party, third party, allows us to really understand the data, understand the customers, and then, like you were saying, really lean into that data to help drive some personalized interactions across our channels. And so what you're seeing here, yes, on the web, we don't have a one size fits all anymore on our website. So part of that personalization strategy is depending on that implicit, explicit personalization strategy, what we know or implying from what we know about you, that allows us to deliver a more robust experience based on where we feel you are in your journey. So we can deliver that personalized offer on our homepage here, or other content blocks that serve up supporting that specific goal or campaign that we were trying to personalize for. So yes, using that data, delivering across multiple channels to hit you where you're at, and being consistent in that so-called offer or message that were personalized for you based on where you're at in your journey.
Now, I'm not going to ask you to give us any success metrics because there's a little bit of secret sauce in there that I don't want you to have to share, but I am curious, how was this received by some of the other senior leaders? And I also curious, like, how do you feel like people kind of internally are able to conceptualize this? Because sometimes it's difficult to kind of explain, like, here's how we're doing, especially when it comes to data. So I'm just kind of curious what the internal impression of this was.
So we definitely have, I feel, a blend of leadership that is on the I would say the outlier of innovation curve, that are fully embracing and understanding the concepts and principles of what we need to do, and they are instrumental in our transformation as we're continuing to do the things that we're discussing today. And then there's some of the other leaders that aren't quite there, but are getting up to speed on these concepts and principles. So I think as we look about it internally, is really walking them from where their mindset is to what the art of the possible is and why we're doing this and the value we can generate from that. So there was some learning, there was some education. We're still walking through this on a variety of levels across the organization. But I think the key that we can really get into is, to your point, on articulating the value, the outcomes, why we're doing this, what does this mean from an outcomes and value perspective, in telling that kind of ROI business case story of not just a shiny kind of tech thing, but there are outcomes and value that is delivered from delivering these types of technology and experiences. So definitely was a education opportunity for some, but at the end of the day, everyone got to the same place, and now we're in the different phases of our roadmap to continue down this personalization strategy.
Yeah, and I think, one of the key takeaways there really is when you start to prove out some of this, it really becomes like a snowball effect of like, oh, this is great. Like, what can we do next? Where do we go next? And those conversations get a lot easier when you start to show some really positive outcomes.
Absolutely. And I think those on the call understand just this example right here, right? Like homepage governance. Everybody wants to be on the
Mm.
homepage,
Oh yeah.
right? And so as we kind of talk through that process, we're able to show how we're able to get the right message on the homepage by using the personalization data and insights that we have. So we don't have one homepage, we have several variations of a homepage now that is tailored and personalized to what the data is telling us based on what we know about the consumers that are coming into our site. So it allows just to reframe that story from a content perspective to show the value of, we're having highly effective personalized content. So it's not a one size fits all, and we're serving up that right content in the right channel at the right time.
Right, and to the right person. We could be showing content to people who for whom it would never
Right.
resonate. And that's, would you rather have, show your content to 10 people who, maybe not don't care, or to that one person that is highly likely to convert? And that's what personalization allows us to do, is really target that content to the exact right person at the right time.
Yeah.
So we've got our AI search, and we're utilizing our new AI tools for search to understand even deeper levels of how folks navigate websites, allow the user to get those answers they're looking for even more quickly than a traditional website search. We're using AI to power our personalization, and with personalization comes a content lift. And I don't think a lot of people think about it that far down the road, but there is a significant content lift there. And I think we would have been remiss if we would have brought in these AI tools, created this amazing experience, but then not looked at the content and not revised it and refreshed it according to our brand voice and our refreshed brand. So what I love about this, and working with the independent bank team, is that we really looked at it holistically. And it was like, if we're going to create all this, I always use this analogy. You wouldn't buy a new car and then put on old tires, right? We would want to bring it, like, let's bring it, let's really make it work, let's really make it happen. And that's when we started talking about a complete content overhaul. We really went through the site, and every word we looked at and rewrote, made sure it fit the brand voice. We connected it with our design system, all the research we had done in that strategy phase around personas and what people cared about, didn't care about, what were the platforms that they are used to engaging on, and then how do we make that consistent throughout the site? And what I love about your brand is there's a subtle cheekiness to it. So it's sort of like, how do we bring that kind of cheekiness and that sort of flavor that is so uniquely independent bank to every single touch point, so that we're not losing it along the way? What this also did was it gave us the opportunity, when we're looking at revising content, to how do we become AI ready? This is a question I get constantly. How do we show up in AI search results better? And the answer really is revising your content. It's, it's a strong SEO strategy that now has kind of morphed into, a generative strategy, but also really looking at, are you structuring your content well to show up in these types of platforms? And are you using the best practices and some of those core fundamentals around, keyword usage, around schema markup, structured data, really making sure that you are buttoned up in all those senses. And the impact really speaks for itself. What we saw is there's a huge uptick in where independent bank is being presented within AI tools, and we're seeing a more unified experience as a whole through the web. And we're seeing it show up more in these AI overviews, and being positioned in front of users as they're doing their kind of initial research. So they're not even hitting the website yet before they have, a really good understanding of the products and the brand itself. And I would love to hear you talk a little bit about the content. I know we handled a lot of the content with your team, which was great to work with, of course. And how do you kind of see that evolving over time? And what were those discussions like internally when it comes to governance of the content on the site?
You bet. I think we had at one point still a Y2K piece of content on our site, right? That's
That's
where,
evergreen, Matt. We can always be talking about Y2K.
right. But just to put it in context, like I think that's where we were at. And so to be honest, this was the hardest part of our journey was the content. That phrase, blood, sweat, and tears, I think this is where we experienced all of that literally, right? And so it was instrumental because we were trying to do all the things that you just outlined, really rethink our content strategy. So we had to really go through and rethink. We had content that didn't exist for key parts of our organization and services, right? We had to simplify not only just the way we were laying, designing, developing content, but how we brought it all together for all of the stakeholders and customers or business units that we were supporting. The adage that we kind of walked into was that marketing owns all this content, so the marketing team needs to update the web and the content. And the realization was we had to go through some internal, I would say, transformation to understand that no, that business unit, you own the content. If something changes in your product or in your service or in your part of the business, we need to work with you to ensure that the content is aligned to our tone, voice, and our content strategy, but you own your content. So we had to change that mindset where we had to get more of the stakeholders involved to own their content and then not just set it and forget it. So I think that was a big part of it, as well as just thinking through the kind of the end game of what we're trying to accomplish. And again, resetting that mindset of we're not just trying to think about it as an inside out standpoint, where this isn't just kind of your product catalog and we're just throwing all this stuff out into the website. So I think that was a part of the rethinking, reframing of how we were going to position the products and services in context of the customer's needs and wants.
Yeah. And, and it's such a great point. I think, we always say like the content piece of any web design is going to be the hardest piece. But when you're also looking at, no, we want to really nail this. We want to get it right. We want to make it content that's ready for the world we live in today, which is powered by AI. It brings another layer to it. And I think that you all attacked it very strategically, and we worked together to come up with a process that worked really well. And yes, it was absolutely blood, sweat, and tears, but I will say it was one of the more successful content exercises I've been through because we worked so well together. There was a lot of transparency between the teams, and we all knew what we were working towards, which is key.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
As you're moving into this next part, I feel like that's where the art and science comes together,
yeah.
right? So we definitely wanted to layer in, the brand and the art piece of it, but the science part of how we wrote content and how we develop content, I think was instrumental in that process too.
Yeah, and it's important, and I always say we write for humans and optimize for bots, and that has not changed. And
Yeah.
we can see it right here, right? We had transformational results like this made a big impact. We saw massive increases in our business banking traffic, which was one of our core goals, as well as increases in our user base. We've seen just across the board the impact of this rebuild and the thoughtfulness that went through it, and then the impact of the tools that we brought in. We have access to more analytics than ever before by implementing these tools. We have a greater chance of success than ever before by using these tools wisely and having them play together well. And it's really showing not just in our sort of visibility, but within conversion rates as well. So I'd love if you could touch on a little bit of what you've seen just sort of at a high level when it comes to product adoption and how your current customers are responding as well.
Yeah, extremely positive, as you mentioned. And so, as you see here, there's 2 points calling out engagement and conversions. I think just kind of across the board, just looking through that KPI, we're seeing a significant increase in both of those categories, as well as you mentioned here in the slide, just I think the robustness of what content we brought to the commercial treasury management side of our organization. And really just that has exponentially exploded. So combining that with our campaigns and how we're activating that specific kind of business segment in the market, coupled with a great, rich, robust experience on the web, we have just seen exponential growth in that area. Measurement wise, you have 2 areas there just to expand on that. Yes, we do biannually NPS, so our scores have continued to climb, and we are at our peak levels as we just completed one earlier in the summer-ish, if you will, just shortly after the launch of the site. So we're really excited where we're at from a NPS standpoint. The last year or so, we've incorporated customer effort score, so CES. For those not familiar with it, that's really looking across a dimension 7-point scale, 4 questions, 3 of them. One of them's open-ended, and we're looking through, we're able to accomplish, how easy was it, and the emotional aspects of completing the task at hand. So it allows us to measure that interaction real time. And so that's where we can continually improve by looking at the experience. And through our AI chat experience, we have at the back end of that the quick CES survey that pops up, so we can understand not only what people are doing in the tool, but how is it performing relatively to an effort. So if we need to make some adjustments, we can use that feedback to correct course and improve that experience real time.
Yeah. And I want to remind everyone that this site is less than 6 months old. And in less than 6 months, we saw these incredible results. And that is like amazing. I think, it's so important to show like when you're using these tools in the right way and you're thinking about the right things, we have a cohesive strategy. The impact that we make can be almost immediate. So I really want to drive that home because I think when people see these stats, they think, oh, it's great. But when you think about the fact that this happened and this has been happening in less than 6 months, it's really incredible.
Yeah, we are really ecstatic where we're at, and just a quick kudos shout out to all the team members internally, specifically the marketing team. We're lean and mean. I feel we got the best team in the biz, and we wouldn't be where we're at without them. Everything from the digital to the creative to the writing, to the data, to the analytics. All of it took a village, and I couldn't be more proud of the work that the team did to get us to this point.
Absolutely. So when you're going back, all of our wonderful listeners and everybody joining today, what are those actionable next steps for your marketing team? This is the part that I always think is incredibly important. What can you do today? When you leave this call, what do you do next? I think we talk about really looking at the data that you have. What kind of access to data do you have? Are you looking at, behavior, preferences? Are you able to look at, conversion rates, engagement? Can you ensure that your tech stack can talk to each other? Really looking at the data you have and auditing that to look at what do I have to start with? Because all of us have great instincts, but we really want to make sure that we're backing this information up by data. And then additionally on that, we want to make sure that data is clean. So looking at ways to ensure data cleanliness and data hygiene, that was something that we did as well and sort of coincided with this project. It kind of came up along the way. Was looking at what does data hygiene look like? We have all these platforms, we're collecting all this data, but how do we maintain it and make sure it's a data of strong integrity? From there, I would say when you're thinking about personalization, think about starting small. You don't have to hit the ground running with such an impact as we saw today with Independent Bank and how that project came together. You still can start small and start testing, and that can fuel some of your greater efforts, especially when we talk about How do we convince stakeholders to adopt AI tools? There's a lot of AI hesitation out there. And really starting small and proving some wins, getting those quick wins can help you build that argument for onboarding some of these higher level tools that are going to give you access to sort of the next level of personalization. Once you're there, that AI optimization piece, using AI to enhance your SEO strategy. So we kind of talk about it's sort of this like I always call like the sort of like a self-licking ice cream cone. You know, you have strong SEO in order to show up better in AI, but you can also use AI to strengthen your SEO, and it can kind of become this circle. So keeping your content fresh and relevant, structuring your content so that it matches what generative engines are looking for and the LLM models are looking for. That's another great way to look at that. And that we actually have an exciting offering coming from Silvertech towards the end of the year that's going to help advise you on this. So make sure you stay tuned to that because I think you're going to find something really interesting coming up soon. So like kind of as we move on and we're talking about this and we talk about optimizing your MarTech stack, really that's what we've talked about in these first 3 steps. How do we optimize our MarTech stack? What do you have? As I've said before, I'm a big believer in making use of what you have. So audit your MarTech stack. Where are there gaps? Are there things that we want to do that are not supported by our tools today? They add features and capabilities to these tools at a rapid pace. So something that if you onboarded a CRM a while ago, maybe an email tool or an automation tool a while ago, and you haven't revisited it recently, there could be options for live chat out of that tool. And if you're thinking about doing live chat, look to the tools you have and how can we integrate with the website using something we already have. Look at the analytics you're getting out of these tools. Is it giving you data that's useful? And then look at, are there ways we can streamline some of this so that we can optimize our MarTech stack, keep it from kind of creeping outwards, but make sure that we're lean and mean and using it to power these digital experiences that we're looking for?
Yeah, I would say just some parting shots on that overall is just leaning into the innovation curve. And I feel
Yeah,
like if you're not jumping on it, you need to. And it's moving fast. And I just feel like it's now not just become, a kind of outlier conversation around AI, obviously, but it just now becomes the table stakes, right? And just at many levels, whether you're looking at it from a predictive modeling perspective to kind of look at some of the targeting segmentation and or just the use of it from a consumer standpoint or experience layer now as you think about like generative engine optimization or answer engine optimization. So I think the evolution is upon us. It's just how fast can you embrace it and drive and test and learn from it.
absolutely. The future is now and it's happening every single day.
Yep.
But that doesn't need to be a negative thing. It doesn't need to be scary. It can still be approachable. It can be these subtle types of tweaks that we start to bring into our web presence and build upon. You know, we continue to build upon and optimize. I did throw up a slide here that's got my LinkedIn as well as Matt's LinkedIn. We love, we're chatty, you can tell already. We love to connect and talk to people. So certainly reach out, follow us on LinkedIn and interact with us. We'd love to, talk to you more about what's going on in your organization and with your digital experiences. Make sure you hit that Q&A. We'd love to talk to some questions right now. We did get some questions actually prior to the webinar that we can address as well. But while we're kind of talking about it in these last few minutes, Matt, I would love right now, you and I were kind of talking about this before we got online. We are in a tricky spot right now economically. And I know that a lot of our participants today are probably feeling the squeeze. And there are probably some good sentiment out there of thinking like, we'd love to do all this, but how do I get approval? How do I get buy-in for something like this when budgets can be tight and, my leadership is more hesitant? So I would love for you to talk a little bit about how you got buy-in with your leadership.
You have to have a seat at the table. I just don't know how else you move a transformation initiative through with not getting up to the layer or the level of where the key decisions are being made. So I think that's a priority. Now, how you get there, there's a variety of dynamics. I know organizations that maybe you have to work with, but then once you're there, I think it's talking about the value of the why, the outcomes, what we're going to get from doing this, or the cost of not doing anything. So
That's an
so I,
important
I
one.
So yeah, so I think there are some ROI and business case justifications of, articulating that. And I do feel like you have to kind of work through some of the relationships and understanding those stakeholders to their needs and what we can do to make their business more effective to help drive growth, achieve their business goals and strategies. So you got to put it in their terms, so to speak, of what you can
Mhm.
deliver to impact their goals and objectives. So there's a variety of things that need to take place, but I think those are some of the key elements that I think about.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny because we really you're talking about internal marketing. We gotta meet our stakeholders where they're at too, and tailor messaging for them as well. And I think that's so important. And I think as we look at these types of projects and we look at how can we get there, really that becomes such an important conversation of getting that leadership buy-in and able to get these types of projects off the ground. And that's where some of those actionable next steps that we just talked about can really help you build that story when you go and take your seat at the table and are able to have these conversations at that level.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this was a great session. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us and telling your story. We love working with the Independent Bank team. We're so proud of the project, as I know you are too. We won awards with it. So, hey, that's great. It's all good things. Make sure you guys connect with us on LinkedIn so we can keep the conversation going. In the meantime, I hope everybody has a great day, and we will see you next time.